I'm Major Karen Ashford, and for 18 years, I've served my country with unwavering loyalty. The last 5 years, I served my husband's family, believing that dedication would eventually earn their respect. But on a single evening at Thornbury Manor, one of Britain's most prestigious Michelin restaurants, during a lavish birthday celebration I paid for, I discovered I had been nothing more than their logistics officer. 13 members of the Pemberton family stood there raising glasses of rare Bordeaux, smirking as they watched me approach the long table. There were 13 of us. There were 12 chairs. My husband Marcus didn't defend me. He just adjusted his silk bow tie and said, "You're better suited for a burger bar than a place this refined." They thought I'd cry and run. They were wrong. I didn't leave to hide. I left to execute what we call a scorched earth campaign. Before I tell you how satisfying it felt to watch their credit cards decline in front of everyone, I need to know something. Where are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? Drop a comment and let me know. I'm always curious where everyone's tuning in from. All right? Let's get into this. The Yorkshire Dales have always smelled the same, a mixture of heather, damp stone, and old money. It was a crisp August evening when I arrived at Thornbury Manor. The restaurant sits perched on a hillside, surrounded by gardens that have been manicured for 3 centuries. If you know Yorkshire, you know this isn't just a restaurant. It's a statement. The stone walls glowed under warm amber lighting as I stepped out of the taxi in my navy dress, structured and elegant but not flashy. Just like me, I checked my watch. 6 o'clock exactly, military precision. I had spent 3 months organizing this operation. Not a combat mission, but something far more volatile. Rosalind Sinclair's birthday at 68. The private dining room, the tasting menu. Everything coordinated down to the centerpiece flowers. I had signed every check. I had made it flawless. I pushed through the heavy wooden doors. The courtyard was warm, filled with that particular sound of the wealthy enjoying themselves. 13 Pembertons stood near a fire pit, bathed in evening light. They looked like they'd stepped out of Tatler magazine. Linen blazers, silk wraps, teeth whitened to aggressive perfection. Rosalind stood in the center, wearing a silver Chanel gown. In her hand she held a glass of red wine. Chateau Margaux, £200 a bottle. I'd ordered 3 at her request. I walked toward them, shoulders back, chin up. "Happy birthday, Rosalind," I said. The conversation died instantly. She turned slowly, pale eyes scanning me from my heels to my hair, pulling back in a neat bun. She didn't smile. She took a deliberate sip of that expensive wine, letting the silence stretch. "Thank you for the organization, Karen," she said, emphasizing the word like it was something distasteful, something manual. "You always were good at managing logistics. But tonight is for real family." My stomach tightened. I looked at Marcus, my husband, the man I'd vowed to protect. He was standing beside his mother, sipping bourbon. He didn't greet me. He didn't kiss my cheek. He looked down at his Italian loafers, avoiding my eyes. "Shall we sit?" Rosalind said, gesturing to the table beneath the trellis. I followed them. My eyes did an automatic inventory sweep. 13 people, 12 chairs. I blinked. The French Laundry doesn't make errors, and neither does Thornbury Manor. I looked at the place cards. Every name was there in beautiful calligraphy. Rosalind, Marcus, Sophie, David, but no cards for Karen. "Marcus," I said quietly, "there's no chair for me." He looked up. For a split second, panic flashed across his face. The look of a man caught between his mother and his wife. But then Rosalind gave him a tiny nod. His spine straightened. He let out a nervous chuckle and adjusted his bow tie. "Oops," he said, loud enough for the waiters to hear. "A simple miscount. You know, Karen, look at this place. It's a bit elevated for your comfort level, don't you think? You've always said you prefer simpler things. You'd probably be happier grabbing a burger down the street." The cousins giggled. It felt like a punch, not anger, clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This was an orchestrated humiliation. I looked at these 13 people enjoying the wine I paid for, preparing to eat the meal I ordered. And I was the punchline. In the army, they teach you that when you walk into a trap, you don't panic. You assess. You extract. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of lavender and betrayal. "Roger that," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Message received. Target is not part of this unit." I performed an about-face and walked away. Behind me I heard relief, chairs scraping. They thought they'd won. They thought the help had been dismissed. I walked out of Thornbury Manor, past the maître d'hôtel, who looked concerned. I pushed through the doors into the cool Yorkshire night. The wind bit at my bare arms, but I felt something else. A cold blue flame of absolute clarity. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. They thought this was over. They had no idea that I had discovered everything. That morning, when I'd seen the message on Marcus's watch, Soldier Bay, our son needs a legitimate father, Sean. Vanessa. Pregnant. A new life being funded with my retirement money. I had spent the last 6 hours taking screenshots of everything. The drained bank accounts. The Cartier receipt for £32,000. The messages between Marcus and his mother, planning the announcement, planning my disposal. They thought I was crying in a hotel room. Instead, I was hunting. I pulled up the contact for James Mitchell, the manager of Thornbury Manor. "James," I said when he answered, "it's Karen Ashford. I'm pulling my authorization from this event effective immediately. Refund my deposit to my personal American Express right now." "Ma'am, that's highly irregular." "Do it," I said. "Now for the bill. Transfer the entire invoice to Marcus Pemberton. Present it to him in front of everyone when dinner is finished." James paused. We'd spoken 3 times over 3 months. We'd bonded over service records. He understood what I was doing. "Understood, Major," he said quietly. "It's done." I hung up. Target 1 engaged. The next call was to the hotel. I removed my credit card from the account. The third call was to the limousine service. I cancelled the return pickup. The fourth call was to my American Express app. I found the corporate card I'd kept active for 5 years. The one Marcus carried to look important. The one tied to Pemberton Construction. Bleeding money. I toggled the freeze switch. Status locked. I had just cut the oxygen from their financial life support. I climbed into an Uber. The driver, an older man, glanced back at me. "Rough night?" he asked. "Actually." I smiled. "The best night I've had in years. I just took out the trash." Back at Thornbury Manor, I imagined James Mitchell walking toward their table at 9 o'clock. No water pitcher. No dessert menu. Just the bill. When Marcus tried his American Express, declined. When his personal card declined. When the corporate card declined. When Rosalind, desperate, offered her Cartier watch and sapphire ring as collateral, the walk back. 13 people in evening wear, stranded on dark country roads. Rosalind's Louboutin heels sinking into soft earth. The wind howling through the vineyards. A 3-mile trek that would teach them something about independence. I checked my phone once. A text from James. A photograph of a Cartier watch sitting on a bill for £10,000. Target neutralized. I smiled in the darkness. But the night wasn't finished. The physical punishment was only the beginning. I had one more move to make. One that would be permanent. 48 hours later, I sat in my solicitor's office with Project X. Not the Thornbury incident. Something far more serious. 6 months ago, I'd noticed irregularities in the household accounts. Money moving through shell companies. Ghost employees on Pemberton Construction's books. 12 full-time staff that didn't exist, billing the Ministry of Defence for Salisbury plane renovations. 3 of the social security numbers belonged to deceased people. £1.4 million in taxpayer money routed into Marcus's personal accounts. Federal fraud, embezzlement. A violation of the Fraud Act. I had copies. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Everything documented and verified. When Marcus walked into our Surrey home with his mother and Edward Blackwood, the family lawyer, they thought they were coming to threaten me into submission. Divorce papers, claims of cruelty, threats to bleed me dry. I slid the folder across the table. "Open it, Marcus," I said. His face went pale. "This is Project X," I explained to Blackwood. "It's a forensic audit. What you're looking at is the documentation of systematic fraud against the Ministry of Defence. £1.4 million over 4 years. Sean's been billing for employees who don't exist. The wages were routed into shell accounts and funneled back into his personal slush fund." I pointed to a figure on the spreadsheet. That is the amount of taxpayer money stolen to fund his lifestyle, his mother's debts, his girlfriend's diamond ring. Edward Blackwood's face turned grey. He stammered. "This is circumstantial." "It's not," I said coldly. "It's sitting on my solicitor's desk. It's ready to go to the Serious Fraud Office. We're talking 10 to 15 years in prison. Minimum." Rosalind let out a strangled sob. "Here's the deal," I said, sliding another document forward. "Uncontested divorce. I keep the house, my pension, my savings. You get nothing. You sign this, you walk away, and this folder stays in my safe. Option B. I drive it to the SFO office in London this afternoon." Marcus looked at his mother. She was falling apart, thinking only of the scandal, The Pemberton name destroyed. "Sign it," she whispered. He did. The pen scratched against the paper. It was finished. 1 year later, I stood on the flight deck of HMS Queen Elizabeth, watching an F-18 launch toward the horizon. The ocean wind tasted of salt and jet fuel. I wore the silver oak leaf of a lieutenant colonel now. Promotion earned, not given. Earned through competence, through sacrifice, through refusal to be broken by people who never deserved my loyalty in the first place. Captain Miller handed me a newspaper. The business section carried the headline, "Pemberton Construction Files for Bankruptcy." Ministry of Defense fraud investigation concludes. Marcus Pemberton accepted a plea deal. Prison sentence suspended. Restitution ordered. He was living in a rental flat in Bristol now. The Pemberton name dragged through every newspaper in the country. Charlotte Fairfax had moved back to London. The engagement ended, the article said, due to irreconcilable financial differences. The money ran out. The mistress ran off. I folded the paper and handed it back. "Old news, Captain," I said. I looked out at the open water. I had spent 5 years chasing their approval, trying to buy a seat at their table with my labor and dignity. They had called me help. I am the help. I help run the most complex logistics network on Earth. I help keep freedom afloat. That missing chair at Thornbury Manor doesn't matter anymore. I didn't build my own table. I built an entire aircraft carrier. The bosun's whistle blew. All hands. Flight quarters. I walked toward the island, my boots hitting steel in a solid rhythm. I am Karen Ashford. I am a lieutenant colonel in the British Army, and I am exactly where I belong. Here's what I want you to understand. Your value was never defined by their inability to see it. The Pembertons tried to shrink me into a servant, treating my strength as weakness. But dignity is something you carry inside. You don't need to beg for a chair. You build your own table. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the strong one who got used and undervalued, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, if you were in Karen's position, would you have sent that file to the authorities without hesitation? Or would you have kept it as insurance like she did? Subscribe to Hidden Family, Infidelity and Revenge. We believe the truth always wins.